This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Forward not even a month later, and on June 3rd, she files a $140 million lawsuit against Titan Sports and quits the company. Meltzer would say the lawsuit has inspired a lot of snap judgment, a lot of which is probably fair, that there may have been some merits to her complaints about the direction of the company, but she was one of the prime beneficiaries of the change. Many would argue the changes have been for the worst morally, even if it wasn't for the worst economically. And after everything she's willingly did to exploit her body for economic gain, including posing for Playboy, she's probably the last person who has the right to complain about her body being exploited and used in a sexually aggressive manner in a court case. There is more than meets the eye, though, but certainly not $140 million worth more. The lawsuit. Were you shocked? Did you have an inclination this was coming? When did you realize, man, this is more than just somebody griping about their payday? We've got real problems here, Vince.
Well, I didn't see the lawsuit coming, no. And I thought it was groundless to a large part. I thought it was a nuisance lawsuit. I thought the lawsuit was put in place so she could get a release, and that would be the negotiating chip she needed to walk. So, the $140 million just kind of gave it away to me. It gave it away to me. It was good headlines. It was something, $140 million is a lot of money, no matter what generation you live in. And so, people were going to talk about it, but, I just thought it was a way to better facilitate her release. That was my.
It's worth mentioning. Meltzer would write that in 98, she being Sable, an estimated $750 to $1 million, quote unquote, largely through exploiting her body. But one of the issues is when you go back to the Unforgiven pay-per-view, which was headlined by Steve Austin's first title defense against Mankind, it drew a 0.85 buy rate, which was a surprisingly high figure based on the standards of the time. And Meltzer would write that Sable felt she deserved an equal payoff to Austin, claiming she was at least equally, if not more, responsible for the buy rate. And the attitude from her garnered some heat in the locker room. Although in hindsight, Meltzer says, if you look at the numbers, the rematch the next month of Austin Mankind without Sable stripping, well, it did a 0.58 buy rate, which was below the normal standard at the time. That buy rate success would continue with Fully Loaded. We talked about earlier where Sable reveals that she's not wearing a top. It's just the handprints. It does a 0.90 buy rate. So she's a ratings draw and a pay-per-view draw and felt like she wasn't being treated fairly. You were writing the checks. How did you handle that?
We stood our ground and paid her fairly. I've had talents come in and say, well, and a lot of times they hear what people are making, and those figures are lies. I've had several conversations with talents where they said, well, so-and-so made this. I said, where in the hell did you hear that? Then you finally squeeze it out of them. Well, that's what they told me. I said, well, I'd go get that guy. So somebody, Jerry Briscoe or somebody would go get that person. And I'd call them out on it. It was just to stir somebody up. I'm sure that some on her side said you should have got what Austin got, or you should have been that hunt. Well, that's not the way we paid. And that's just, she may have I'm sure she had a leg to stand on with her argument, but she made a lot of money that day. And the bottom line was, did you write down a payoff for her on that show that was fair? Absolutely. It was fair. And then when she got the check, is when the fallout or the complaints came about. And yes, I heard all those. And yes, I sat down and I had no issues whatsoever justifying my payoff to her. So it's just a matter that she believed in her own world, in her own mind, that she should have made a lot more money than she got paid. And let me tell you something. That happens a lot on these pay-per-views because there's not really a formula, quite frankly, to use. It's all discretionary. And it's not a real smart system. because you really got to understand the business to be able to to pay fairly in that regard. And it's kind of like the draft. Here's what I always looked at it. You look at the monies, look at the position of the card, and then you slot things. It's kind of like, again, like the draft, the NFL draft, for example. The number 3 pick this year is going to get 10% more than the number 3 pick last year. So you look back at previous events with similar grosses and revenues, where you were on the card, your contributions on that card in that match, and you put all those variables together and you try to come up with a sensible, honest, fair number. But because of the system that you're utilizing to achieve that number, there's always going to be doubt. There's always going to be consternation, and there's going to be concern. It's just human nature. So, but we felt we paid her fairly, and she felt that she didn't get paid fairly, and that's kind of where we left it. I don't know what do you do?
Right.
She's not going to get Austin money. She's not. That's the same. I had the same issue. Look, I had the same issue with Joni with China. I want a contract that's equal to Austin's. Well, Joni, you're not going to get that. Well, I don't know why. I'm as popular as he is. I sell this. Whatever. Look, you're not going to get it. I'm not even going to go to Vince for that number because he'll think you're crazy. It makes no sense, Joni. You're not getting paid Austin money. He's the top guy in the business. And I'm sorry, you're not 1A. So it's not. Again, it's a Sable thing we're talking about here today, but it's just a repeat and a rehash and a prelude to others doing the same exact thing.
Let's talk about money a little more here. Meltzer would write, it's believed her first Playboy spread paid her in the range of $150,000 plus a small piece of the magazine's increase in business, which probably resulted in a total payoff of more than $200,000. She signed to do a similar deal for a second cover in Centerfold that was scheduled for an August release, which is probably another reason things got to where they wound up. The WWF not only allowed, but in fact brokered and encouraged the first deal and was involved in the timing of it, feeling it would be great publicity for WrestleMania, which it certainly turned out to be. Mero at first turned down Playboy, but wound up acquiescing when the money deal was upped. For the second deal, the magazine went straight to her, and they inked the deal without the magazine going through Titan Sports and Jim Bell, who was by contract to serve as her agent since she was using the name Sable and using her marketing license, both of which the company owns. The WWF, of course, wanted a cut, which they didn't want the first time. And quite frankly, since they encouraged it the first time, nobody would have suspected that they would have wanted the second time, although by contract, they may be legally entitled to such. There's no doubt that a large part of the reason the first spread sold so well was because it was pushed to death on WWF TV. And without a similar push on TV, the second spread wouldn't have been anywhere near the success. It's also doubtful the second spread would have had the same success due to it no longer being a novelty. In failing to get a cut from either side, since Mero and Playboy reached their own agreement, the WWF threatened to legally get the magazine to stop the photo spread because she was going as both Sable and Rena Mero, which was already shot and scheduled for an August release. What do you remember about this Playboy thing being a bone of contention? This is one of those deals where, Jim, to me, it feels like I don't know, Vince McMahon is worrying about nickels, or is he more worried about setting a precedent? I mean, if he got his cut of $200,000, what the fuck did it matter? You're making so much money hand over fist off of her otherwise. What's another 20 or 30 grand one way or another? Or
it's nothing.
Is it more of, no, you set a precedent that you can't go around us and get your own deals with our likeness?
Of course that's it.
Yeah.
Of course that's it. It's not the money. It's not like you said, he drew a 10% agency commission, 20 grand.
No big deal.
No, not at all. He pays more than that for when his tailor comes by to buy suits. Really, I'm being facetious to some degree, but not really.
Right.
Pretty honest. No, I think it's the precedent issue, because if she goes outside the envelope and using our intellectual property that we owned, like we said earlier, Conrad, the thing that made that the novelty of her being in Playboy for the first time was huge. Secondly, the fact that the WWE, WWF promoted it ad nauseum with some really slick vignettes. They were strategically placed, in peak hours on our top show. That became, as I said earlier, that's the infomercial that was created. And so it was to Sable's, if Sable was getting a percentage of each magazine she sold on the second go round, for example, it's to her advantage to want WWE to promote the hell out of it. Anybody would. But she didn't, she just looked at that payday and thinking that, she was so over apparently that she would still do great with it, even though the company was not going to promote it because they weren't a part of the deal. You want the company to be a part of your deals so they can promote your project. It's just logic, common sense.
Let's keep it going here and talk about some of the nuts and bolts of how this thing all got sideways. It's a 24-page lawsuit that she files, and she says, or in it, she says the company controls its performers through carefully designed programs of intimidation and humiliation, including scripted sexual provocation in and out of the ring and stage stunts that are inherently dangerous under contracts that absolve the WWF of all responsibility. And it also claims that the company repeatedly wanted her to have her breasts exposed on national television through a quote unquote scripted mistake, which she routinely refused to do. And Meltzer would freestyle. This probably answers once and for all the questions about similar situations with Jacqueline on Raw. Although even the most gullible would have believed that when they went to a replay with a better camera shot, that it wasn't really an accident. And, Rena would claim that she repeatedly refused to allow her breasts to be exposed in a similar accident, and she was called a prima donna by Vince McMahon when she refused. And she voiced complaints about what they wanted her to do on a UK pay-per-view in May when they wanted her to be stripped down to nothing but a bikini bottom. Instead, they had to do a different alternative finish when she refused to drop the title in Orlando. She brought her lawyers with her, and McMahon said, if you don't drop the title, you're in breach of contract. So they came up with this other weird stuff, including a handwritten contract. I can't believe this is real. That says, notwithstanding any agreement between us, and because we disagree about the fashion I would lose my belt, and because of my concerns of humiliation and safety, it is agreed that I would appear tonight solely upon your contractual assurances that I will not lose my gown nor wrestle, and that the girl with whom I am interfacing with agrees with her role. My appearance in Manchester shall be no more than parading in the ring and shall not include wrestling. I agree to make a scheduled personal appearance outside of the ring, and otherwise I will have a complete hiatus from the company until May 23rd, at which time we hope to have our contractual concerns resolved. Until such time, neither I nor the WWF, its employees or subcontractors, shall speak disparagingly about the other, scripted or unscripted. This is a handwritten contract. What the fuck is this? Do you remember this?
Insanity. Ego's running wild. It was crazy. It became unmanageable. And again, I mentioned this earlier about a remark about you can't help somebody that don't want to help themselves. She was convinced that this is where she belonged, as far as her perception was concerned, and so forth. She also believed, I'm sure she had West Coast management, somebody telling her she's going to be the next big thing, the next Pam Anderson or whatever it may be, and she bought it. So it was crazy. The old theory is that Vince always said we got to get the match in the ring. It's like Jeff Jarrett saying, "I'm going to," he gave me a verbal, he's going to stay, and then he double crossed us. And when he's supposed to put the Intercontinental title on China, which we talked about. So it's the same deal, man. And it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's unnecessary for that to happen to that degree. And it was just she changed. The business had changed her a lot. Her success changed her a lot. And again, I don't know what her home life was. Was that philosophy enhanced, or did Mark try to, sway her to do something else? I don't know. It's kind of hard to go against your wife when she's so hell bent on this thing, and you're talking about a lot of money being bounced around.
A ton of money, and she's taking it very, very seriously. She even says that her contract was changed. It It was originally set to expire in April of 99, but in June of 98, McMahon gives her a different contract. She didn't sign it, but by August of 98, she claimed before a match at Nassau Coliseum, quote, Jim Ross demanded she sign the renewal and said he'd brought with him a notary from Connecticut for the purposes of notarizing the contract. She claimed she told Ross she wanted her lawyer's advice before signing, but Ross demanded she sign it immediately, saying, as McMahon had, the new contract was, with the exception of payment and appearance modifications, the same as the original. The new contract did differ, and then it had an arbitration clause, which was the only major difference. What do you remember about her saying that you forced her to sign it on the spot?
Well, how do I do that? Get her in a hammerlock?
Right.
Come on. So, it was a matter of trying to get the match in the ring, as Vince's philosophy always was. I'm sure I was trying to close the deal. I'm a salesman. I'm representing my company as best I could. But I don't recall me demanding. But I may have in her view. So I'm not discrediting her honesty. But her definition of JR demanding and JR actually demanding might be two different things. But in any event, I do remember it was just, I think everybody, including her, us, everybody was getting tired of the constant ongoing negativity and it just put people on pins and needles. And, you just didn't need it. Just didn't need it. So I vaguely remember that day, quite frankly. But I don't remember it being a big issue or a big blow up or yelling and screaming or anything like that. I always felt like I had a good rapport with her, and because I treated her respectfully, but she outgrew her role, and we didn't grow along with it very, very well, apparently. So she knew what she wanted, and it was not what the company wanted at that point in time. She wanted to play quarterback, and we needed a wide receiver.
Well, she's looking to receive $100 million of punitive damages. She also wants to own her name and her likeness. She wants to be known as Sable and be free of her contract with this extra $100 million in punitive damages. We should mention that she took issue with commentary and even specifically lists things that Jerry Lawler and Shawn Michaels said, like, do you think she's horizontally accessible? I hear she's accessible in every which way. And while she's holding the mic, someone says she certainly seems comfortable with that microphone up at her mouth like that. She would complain the way they used her in catalogs, that they wanted her to do a lesbian angle, that some of the guys had road rage and roid rage, and they wanted to beat her up. One guy even threatened to bite her face and ruin her career. And she's painting a very, very bad picture of the company here, to say the least. What's Vince's reaction to this lawsuit?
Be competitive and represent the company and stand up for the company. And he had Jerry McDivitt, and that's a big upset. That's a big up. Jerry McDivitt's a bad dude, boy. He's a great lawyer, great friend still to this very day, because he's a Pittsburgh guy, and my little Jan was a Pittsburgh girl, and they always had great. I remember going to his wedding, Jerry's wedding, and I don't think I was even in the company at that. I may have been one of my hiatuses. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, you got to defend yourself. You ain't talking chump change here. So yeah, Vince was ready to battle, and he had the guy that could lead the charge in Jerry McDivitt.
Well, 11 days after she files suit, she shows up on Nitro. She's sitting front row. It's been freestyled that WCW goes and plants signs in the crowd that says Sable 1, Vince McMahon 0. There's several close-ups of her. She's never identified as Sable or Rena Mero, and Eric Bischoff is the only one who really comments on her, just noting he's seen Playboy and making cryptic comments. This is kind of a big deal here at the height of the Monday Night War. I guess maybe it's not by June of 99. You guys have it well in hand. Were you surprised to see her on Nitro? Yeah,
a little bit, much like I was Lex Luger showing up on Nitro in the Mall of America, or where it's called in Minneapolis.
Right.
Yeah, it's surprising, but it was wrestling, and wrestling sometimes spends more time on driving the low road than to do the high road. So, you can't be totally shocked, but it was surprising.
Of course, you guys eventually file your paperwork. It's a cease and desist to Rena Mero, saying We are suspending the usage of the name Sable, so you can't use it anymore. And Meltzer would say this is part of a negotiating ploy, mainly to impact the Playboy deal, which is really what started all of this in the first place. However, over this past weekend, she was at an autograph session autographing the name Sable on the current TV Guide issue, which she is on the cover for. Man, this thing gets sideways in a hurry, and she starts to do a bit of a tour, sort of bearing the company in a major way. And we know eventually she's going to come back, but in this moment here in 99, it doesn't feel like that's even remotely possible, does it?
Well, no, it wasn't logical. It wouldn't stand up in court. She didn't own a name. The company owned her name. So, again, it was all these things, in my opinion, only my opinion, were done to secure a release with her name Sable intact. So she could go about her merry way and do whatever the heck she wanted to do. In theory, that may sound good to somebody listening out there right now, but you got to protect your intellectual property. You can't set a precedent here where any of the talents, no matter their gender, can go out of the envelope, out of the company, and use the company IP and all that intellectual property, and go into business for themselves. You can't run a business that way. It just doesn't work.
She's also pointing out on her press tour that I only had $150,000 guarantee, which was much less than the men in the company, and guys in the men's locker room would try to punch holes in the wall so they could see us dressing. They were having a contest to see who had the bigger nipples. They were having women pull up their skirts and expose their private parts. And, of course she continues to,
well, I don't know where all that came from. I swear to God, I don't know. Pull up their, it's funny that none of the other women said anything about that I can recall. And the second thing is that there were a lot of men on the roster making less than $3,000 a week, guarantee.
Sure.
We didn't work strictly off guarantees. You worked off the magic at WWE at that time was the more you produce and the better the houses are, the more productivity that you create, the more money you're going to make. It's almost like a salesperson, a commission type deal. So I don't buy that one because I did those contracts. I know what guys made, and $150,000 downside guarantee it's probably $156,000. That's $3,000 a week. So it just wasn't accurate. It just wasn't accurate but the bottom line of it was that if you go back and look at her numbers, she killed that number.
Oh, of course she did. Yeah.
Blew it away, man. So who's losing this thing? I don't get it sometimes. I think she saw that she could be a bigger star by leaving, and she had established her foothold, and she was going to be a big star in mainstream Hollywood doing something. And she was convinced of that. And so how do I get out of this deal so I'm free to go do those things? Well, you got to get released.
Right.
So maybe if I make life as miserable as I can, maybe that release will come sooner than later, and I'll get what I want.
Let's also mention that she does make an appearance on Jay Leno. They had been promoting her as something like World Wrestling Federation star Sable. Of course, when they actually get to the show, they have to change that promo. And on the show, Leno is going to refer to her as Rena Mero, the artist formerly known as Sable. And it doesn't really show all the charisma and personality that maybe they had hoped. So it's not this huge windfall appearance for her. And, of course, Jerry McDevitt is doing his best to shut down WCW and Rena here. He says, quote, "She can sue us till the cows come home and she's not going to get it." Talking about the name Sable. She can make all the allegations she wants and it won't get her anywhere. So he's coming in hot. And fast forward a few weeks, and it looks like maybe there's a settlement on the horizon. It comes out through all this back and forth that Playboy had struck a deal with her, not for the 150, maybe over 200 for the first spread, but $850,000 for this second run here. And now it looks like there's going to be some sort of a settlement. The details of the split are, besides just billing her as Sable in the magazine, she's going to get future merchandise revenue. There will be terms in her release that states that she's going to try to save as much face, as is the company. Were you happy when this is officially settled out of court on July 22nd?
Hell yeah, of course I was. It's taking too much time. Too much time away from other issues, and other talents felt like they had issues that were just as important in their world as arenas were in hers. So yeah, I was glad, and I was glad to be able to move on. You know, until all this legal stuff got involved, and the lawyers got involved, and the agents got involved, Arena was by and large a pleasure to do business with. She was not. Did she have these ego things? Yeah, but everybody on the roster had the same stuff. They just expressed themselves differently. Some were even louder, and some weren't. But yeah, I was glad it was over for everybody's sake. Let's get some, peace of mind again and move on. Let's just move on. The company was hot, and we were doing good. And let's enjoy the good, because the good's not always going to be there. Pro wrestling is cyclical. And when you don't have a talent hot, you don't have a talent with great momentum, and you've built this persona, then business could get cold. You got to get people over. And without any doubt, as we said here many times, Sable was over.
Let's also mention that when the media starts to cover that there is a settlement here, a statement from McMahon on Entertainment Tonight sort of insinuates that Rena's not going to get any sort of cash in this settlement. And Mark is going to say, well, that's not exactly true. And they also have Paul White and Lisa Moretti on the program to knock Sable and call her a prima donna. But the gist is she can't go to work for WCW or work anywhere in wrestling until August of 2001, but Mark can go do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
And the company is not negotiating, getting a cut from the second Playboy shoot. All that's over. And, it's at least put to bed, or so it seems. But $850,000 for that second one, man, it's quite a payday.
Great payday. Happy for her. She got a lot of money. And again, she opened the door for a lot of women in our company to try to replicate that money or something close to it. Yeah, it was a great payday for her. But again, she earned it. She earned it because she was so hot and so over at that time, and she had the machine behind her. People hear that all the time. Well, the machine is a big deal. When you turn a project into an infomercial that's slickly produced, that's provocative, entertaining, then you're doing good marketing, good promotion for the company and for yourself. So she was she was at the right place, the right time, and just had and got a hell of a payday out of that damn thing. So, but it shouldn't. It was almost like that was the last big thing she wanted to do, and $850,000 is a lot of money, Conrad. But even in your world, but quite frankly, it ain't life-changing money.
No, not at all.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.